anecdote. Like, now what's my opening line?
That was your opening line. Hey, Fed heads. Welcome to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. I'm your host, Tripp, and you just heard Matt talking. Matt, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks for having me again, guys. It's been a while.
It's been a little bit. So, of course, we're broadcast around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, live on Facebook, and you can catch up on any podcast catcher or on just Cigar Federation channel at youtube.com. If you're watching live, feel free to leave comments, ask us questions. We like that. We like a little interaction with the audience. So tonight we are smoking the Joya de Nicaragua Gran Reserva. No, the Joya de Nicaragua 1970 Antaño Gran Reserva. Did I say that in the right order?
I mean, it's close enough. It's pretty close.
Yeah, it's a long name. So this is the same Antano that pretty much everybody has smoked before. I don't think there's many people out there who have never smoked an Antano. It's a pretty well-known cigar brand. And this is, of course, the same blend, but they actually aged the leaves for 5 years before rolling.
It's the Antano, and when it first debuted, I was still very much just kind of like a social cigar smoker as opposed to the hardcore freak that I probably am or became at one point. And I don't know the full background. I don't know if you do, but I think the Antano really changed, the cigar industry. I think when it first debuted, it was, along the lines of what Opus was when Opus debuted, and it, really just kind of pushed a bleeding edge kind of cigar. And this is the second time I've smoked it. The first time I wondered to myself, I want to do a side-by-side with the original and notice the difference. Obviously, we're not doing that tonight, but I'm curious. I think I can taste some difference, but it's been a while since I smoked an original Antaño. When was the last time you smoked one? And have you smoked them side by side yet?
I haven't smoked them side by side, so this is only the second time I'm smoking the Gran Reserva. The first one I had was at the show. I think it was either while I was interviewing Juan or shortly after. But your palate is completely jacked, and I think it was day 2. It might have been day 1, but still, I was like 6 cigars deep already. But I had planned this week on trying kind of that experiment. I smoked the Antano yesterday, and then I had planned on smoking this one back to back with it, and I just kind of ran out of time. The cigar smoked a lot longer than I expected it to, and then I was near the end of the workday, so I just kind of put it off until today. And then we decided we were going to do this show, and it seemed like the perfect timing.
Well, then I'm going to keep looking back to you throughout the show to give me comparison notes with the original.
Yeah, so, right off the bat, it's definitely not as strong. It doesn't have, like, that super intense pepper and that, like, there's, like, a really rich oaky kind of note, like a woody note that I get from the regular Antano, and that is way less intense than it is. Or it's way less intense in this version of the cigar than it is in the original.
I almost get. It's been a while since I reviewed a cigar, so I'm cautious to use the word floral, but almost like a floral flavor on the retrohale of this one.
Actually, I can absolutely see that. There is a little, like, kind of a woody floral note that I get.
Yeah, I'm digging it. I'm only quarter of an inch, half of an inch in, but really solid smoke.
And if anybody watching is interested in getting these, it looks like they are kind of just hitting the shelves within the last couple weeks. So you should be able to track some down and buy them now. But of course, we're not here just to talk about cigars. We're here also to pair. And you're kind of a beer guy. I'm kind of a beer guy. And we're both kind of in places where there's just a ton of craft beer available. So we both went with kind of like craft beer. I went with mostly local beers, but the first one's not quite local.
What's your first one?
So my first one is I don't know how this is going to work with this cigar. I don't usually pair this beer with cigars, but this is Anderson Valley Blood Orange Goza. So for people who don't know what a Goza is, first it's pronounced Goza, and second it's an interesting beer style. It's become one of my favorites because it's almost not like drinking beer. It's typically very low alcohol. It's a little bit sour, and it's got kind of a salty character to it. And Anderson Valley, I'm not sure they even have like a normal Goza, but their flavored Gozas have gotten really popular in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't know if they do have they've got the blood orange, they've got the briny melon, they've got the
gin and tonic.
The holy Goza. Gozas are the kind of style, and really sours on the whole are the kind of style that it's like a love it or hate it. I had a buddy over a couple weeks ago and gave him the Westbrook Goza.
Oh, I love that one.
Which is really, like the epitome of what you're looking for in that salty, sour Goza style. And yesterday we were hanging out smoking a cigar. We stopped at the liquor store, and he's like, "Where can I get more like that?" So it's the kind of thing like, and I give it to my wife, and she's like, "This is horrendous. How do you drink this?" So it's really the kind of thing. It's a love it or hate it style.
Yeah, and I find with a lot of people, the first time they try a Goza, they hate it because you just don't really know what to expect. It doesn't taste anything like it looks. It's like got that kind of like fruity tang, like almost like the sourness of like a lime, but then it's got that like salty element, and then it kind of tastes like beer. So this particular one is kind of reddish from those blood oranges, and it's not overly sour or overly salty, which is, there are some Gozas out there that are like puckering sour. This one's just kind of a nice fruity sourness, and so far I think it goes with the cigar pretty well. What's your first pairing there?
So, again, we kind of put this together spur of the moment this afternoon. I took a hodgepodge. I tried to go all New Jersey, and then I looked through my fridge and what was ready, and I couldn't do it, but I came close. So we're going to start with Bolero. Can you see that? Oops. Bolero yeah. Cyber Bullied. I
like that label.
It's a really cool label. You can't really even appreciate it unless you look it up online, because it's got references to Untapped. It's got like Facebook messages in it. It's actually quite funny. So Bolero is a New Jersey brewery. They're not a contract brewer. They're a nomad brewer. So they don't have their own brewery. They just hop around from spot to spot. And for a variety of reasons that aren't necessarily important for this show, they've gotten a lot of flack over the past couple of years from the New Jersey beer community for some of their practices and some of their luck or lack thereof in what they're trying to do. And so every beer that they produce, there's some theme of the bull or the cow, or which you'll see in a little bit because I've got another beer from them also. So they came out with this beer. It's a 6.9% 0 IBU IPA with Amarillo and Citra. So it's it's funny because
so is it like 100% dry hopped?
I don't even know, right? There was a push like a couple of years ago, where everybody was like, "Oh, I'm going to come out with 150 IBUs. I'm going to come out with 1,000 IBUs." And the average palate, once you get past like 80 IBUs, you don't even taste anything. So it was just kind of a pissing contest. And now I've noticed that there's been a big push to see, how low can we go while still giving that hoppy flavor.
Yeah.
So it's Amarillo and Citra on the way to the fermenter before system overloading double dry hop of Mosaic and Amarillo, then Citra, Summer, and more Mosaic. So
wow.
The super soft bitterness with dreamy levels of stone fruit and apricot making way to white peach and mango. And the cool part about this is a portion of the proceeds from all of the beers sold are being donated to the Cyber Smile Foundation to fund their 24-hour hotline for victims of cyberbullying around the world. So it's, they're trying to make a joke but also do good.
Yeah, I like that.
You can't really appreciate from my proper glassware here, #proper glassware, but a little murky as is the Northeast style here, New England style. A nice kind of orange, not super transparent, a little murky, like I said. Taste is phenomenal.
That reminds me a little bit of you're probably not familiar. I might have sent you a beer from them, Fort George. They're in Astoria, Oregon, all the way out on the coast. They're kind of like it's actually the town where the Goonies was filmed, so it's like super popular for that reason. But they've also got this one brewery that's really good. And the last time I was there, I'm trying to remember exactly what the ingredient was. I think it was like pine needles or something like that. But they had an IPA that had no hops in it. And it was just like, I don't know, pine needles or something like that. Pine cones, maybe. Yeah. It was some weird, like, natural ingredient that they used. And it was actually pretty good.
It's, I was never a beer drinker. I was a Scotch drinker, a whiskey drinker, a bourbon drinker. And one summer, you can't drink Scotch when you're sitting on the beach. And a friend was like, you should really get into craft beer. I was like, I don't like beer. And they're like, you like cigars, you'd love craft beer. And I've kind of gone all in over the past 3 years.
A little bit.
Yeah.
We were, when we were in Connecticut, I think it was John mentioned you and like how obsessed with beer you are. And then he pulled up your Untapped and was amazing everybody at the table.
If you look at my Untapped, I started it 3 July 4ths ago. And according to that, I've had, on average, like 840 unique beers a year over those 3 years. It makes being an alcoholic a game. I mean, it's fun. But I like that, you get that weirdness. Like, who would think to, make a beer with pine cones or pine needles? There's a brewery here that I've drank on the show before called Carton in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey. They made a beer once. They make a lot of crazy beers. But they made a beer once called Deli, and it was inspired by a pastrami sandwich. Like, who would think to make a beer inspired by a pastrami sandwich that like actually tastes good and not like horrible?
Yeah, they seem to be really good at that kind of like come up with an abstract concept for beer and make it taste good. We had one that Dennis, who's one of our newer mods, and he's watching. He brought a crowler of their peach swisher on Cigar Safari, so we were drinking peach swisher at Drew Estate.
Peach swisher is, and who would ever think to have that? Like,
and it does. It has like that, like artificially but kind of delightful peach flavor that a flavored cigar has.
And you get a little bit of that like blunt roll kind of twang or whatever. Yeah, it's what Augie Carton is doing there is something unique. Yeah.
So for I don't remember if I mentioned the ABV of the Blood Orange Goza. The ABV on this is a like super drinkable 4.2. That's one of the reasons I really love Gozas is like they're my summer beer. Like when you're super hot, like you're mowing the lawn or something, it's like drinking Gatorade. But you're drinking at the same time. So it's got like a really nice orange juice kind of flavor. I mean, which is exactly what you would expect from the name, but it actually goes really well with a cigar. I've always kind of liked orange juice with a cigar because it's so contrasting. But this has like a little bit of that sweetness and a little bit of that sourness that I feel like really highlights the flavors of the cigar. It brings out some of the spice that you don't really get as much in this Gran Reserva as you do in the classic Antano format?
See, I'm getting a lot of. I keep going back to the floral, but I think the hops in this IPA kind of really pairing well with the cigar and drawing out that nice, smooth kind of florally flavor. I'm gonna keep going home with that until we move on to the next pair.
Speaking of which, I can move on to my next one now. Actually, before I move on, I'll show a little sneak peek of Breakside What Rough Beast, and then I'm going to talk about it a little bit when we get back from this commercial break.
Brought to you by Gurkha Cigars. Gurkha Cigars, makers of the world's finest cigars. Try the 93 rated Heritage featuring Rosado, Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, and Dominican, Pennsylvanian, and Nicaraguan fillers. Blended by Gurkha's blending team at American Caribbean Cigars, it is hand-rolled Nicaraguan, available in 35-count boxes. Talk to your local B&M about the Heritage today, or talk to them about other fine Gurkha cigars. Whatever your taste preferences, Gurkha has a cigar that's right for you.
All right, welcome back, guys.
Usually do get the Bolero. But
we've got a couple of audience questions here. Peter Janetatos, I hope I said that right. Or
Nice job.
Genetatos. No, Genetatos. That sounds right. He wants to know if we've both had Treehouse. I've never had the pleasure, unfortunately. It's tough to get all the way here on the West Coast.
And I'm just not a nice enough friend that the few times I've gotten it, because of how hard it is even for me to get, I just never sent it to Tripp. Actually, it's funny because I'm here at Barrister Cigars in Union, New Jersey, and I just saw somebody walk in that I just handed the rest of my can of Cyber Bully to, and he actually just made a trip to Treehouse for me last week. So I got to try Lights On from Treehouse, which I've had previously and is a phenomenal pale ale. Gets overshadowed really by the rest of the Treehouse offerings, but for a nice mellow pale ale, amazing. And then I tried Sap, which again I've had before, which is my least favorite Treehouse offering. It just does nothing for me. I think it tastes a little bit better at the new brewery, because they just opened a second brewery for Treehouse. I know one's in Monson. I forget where the other one is. Charlton. And then I've had some offerings. I've had some of the Curiosities and some of the Treehouse, and I've got one of their stouts, this peanut butter stout that they just came out with. That is supposed to be phenomenal, and Buddy is just holding on to it for our next share. So I'll keep you guys updated on that.
So now I'm going to formally introduce my second pairing. So this is What Rough Beast from Breakside Brewery. This is a New England style IPA. Breakside, I've had them on the show before. They were founded. I'm blanking on it. I forgot to take notes on them. I think they were founded in 2011. It might have been later than that. But either way, they're fairly new. They started off as a really small 30 barrel, I think, brewery, which is not super small, but it's pretty small for it's not a full production brewery. And their second year of operation, they decided to make 100 beers within one calendar year. And they, of course, released the final beer on the weekend of Christmas. And I had to make it down there for that because it was their competitor to Pliny the Younger.
That's pretty cool.
And it was fantastic. And they actually, so since then, it comes out every year around the same time as Pliny the Younger. And they're now I think this year there were 6 different breweries that had, their own take on the Pliny the Younger style. And a bunch of bars have started doing blind tastings. So you go in and you pay $30 or whatever, and you get 6 different triple IPAs, and then you rank them. And then they publish the results so people know. They don't know what they were drinking at the time, but then after the fact they find out, and then after the fact you find out what everybody preferred. And Pliny the Younger came in like 3rd place.
Yeah.
And this one was 1st place. And it is just really good. So, but this is their Northwest style IPA. You can see it's super hazy there. Not as orange as some, but it's still pretty orange. Kind of yellowy. And it's, of course, that like hazy style, super, super fruity, but also super like floral hoppy. They're not really bitter, this particular style generally. I think this is going to go really well with the cigar. What's your second pairing?
So I'm doing another Bolero just because I want to keep doing Jersey since I'm here. This one's called Muwanti. Kind of like Mountie, but I told you they like to do the beer thing. So this one, this is interesting. So this is a let me look it up and look at my notes here. A 7% smoked maple coffee brown ale. So a lot of bacon smoke and coffee with some maple syrup. Again, this is a yearly release. I don't know if I told you this about the last one, but both were canned on the 21st. So we're talking less than a week old on both of them. I've let this one warm up a little bit since we've been talking. So you get a little bit of that smokiness, which I'm not a huge fan of smoked beers. I'm also not a huge fan of brown ales. But when you add in the coffee and the maple syrup, really, really kind of works nicely. I don't know how well it's going to work with the cigar, but the beer is solid.
I don't generally like smoked beers either. They've just, I don't know. It's weird because I feel like it makes them taste salty, regardless of whether they actually taste salty. It just kind of makes your palate do that because you're so used to, I don't know, smoked meats and bacon and stuff like that. The Northwest style IPA, I think, is going really, or the Northeast style IPA rather, New England IPA, is going really well with the cigar. I feel like New England IPAs generally work better with a cigar than most IPAs because they've got kind of that sweetness, but not super maltiness. It's kind of like a fruity sweetness instead of a malty sweetness that I feel like goes really well with typically any cigar, but particularly like a kind of spicy cigar like this.
Yeah, I think it's, I could see how the IPA would work really well with this one. I'm trying to think of my past pairings and what I'd say. I think once you get, it depends on the IPA.
It really does.
The sweetness of a lot of the New England styles will work well because that flavor wouldn't necessarily overpower the cigar. Whereas once you get into a darker beer, a stout, an adjunct heavy stout, I feel like you're completely, you've got a bunch of different flavors that are just fighting against each other as opposed to working in harmony that you're looking for with a pairing, right?
But I mean of course it depends on the cigar too. You're not going to pair a dark beer with something, I don't know, something really mild,
right?
And I just realized I forgot to mention this Breakside is 6.8% ABV, so kind of
you're moving
average up. I would say.
How's the cigar now?
It's good. It's I'm definitely getting more of that floral kind of flavor. It's weird how much milder than the regular Antano it actually is. It's much more refined. It's still got a ton of flavor, but it's way more refined.
I'm curious, is the intent, and I don't know if when you talked to Juan Martinez what he said and if anybody asked him this, but I mean, is the intent for this to be a regular release? Like, do they have a stockpile of 5-year aged tobacco? Because I could see this being really solid.
Yeah, so the impression that I got, he'll actually be on Cigar Chat week after next, I think.
It's almost like we planned this.
Yeah, it's almost like it, but we didn't. I assure you we didn't. My impression was that it is going to be a regular release, but they'll be a little more limited than the Antaños that you see everywhere. I think, like, my personal thought on this is that the Antano brand had kind of lost some of its value to the customers because they're so readily available on like Cigar Bid and stuff like that, and they're in all the catalogs, and so they wanted to have that brand, but something a little more premium. So I got the impression that they've been stockpiling this tobacco for a while, and they basically will have like, you know, kind of like the Ligas have, where they have a 5-year cycle where new tobacco's coming in, old tobacco's going out.
I'm excited to hear that because, you know, again, it's been a while since I smoked an Antaño. To your point, I mean, it's, you know, whether it's just because it's the same thing with beer, right? The beer that you see that comes in New Jersey's got a growing beer scene, so we get all this new beer that we've been asking for forever, and it shows up, and for the first week or month, you're like, oh, we've got Night Shift on the stand, we've got Crooked Slave, we got this, we got that, and everybody buys it, and then you're like, oh, it's, you know, it's gonna always be there.
Yeah, so you're not as excited about it all the time because you're trying to get that thing that you couldn't get before, but now that it's readily available, it's just not as big of a deal in your mind. And I feel like that's part of the reason they're coming out with this cigar is to combat that feeling a little bit. But I mean, like the first time I smoked an Antaño, I remember I had heard about it and I ordered like a 5-pack from CI or something back in the day. And I got sick as a dog. Like, dude, I legit thought I had the flu. I was convinced that I was, like, actually sick. And then I went inside and ate something and sat down for a little while. And it was like, oh, wow, that was that cigar. I didn't know cigars could be that strong. And this one, I feel like not many people would have that problem.
No, I think it's definitely, although, you know, now that we're firmly in the second, third.
It is a little sneaky.
It's definitely more, as Jose Blanco used to say, you know, it's might not be full strength, but it's definitely full flavored at this point. Mm-hmm. You know, because that we keep calling it a floral note, whatever you want to refer to it as, is really coming through even stronger now than it was in the first half inch or so.
Yeah, I feel like I can't tell whether it's actually a floral note or not, but to me it tastes like a mix of, like, I don't know. This sounds so stupid. I hate talking about cigars because I use all these words and descriptors that I wouldn't normally use. It tastes like kind of like rose water and like oak, like barrel-aged rose water. That's what it reminds me of. Like, I come up with these stupid things when I'm smoking a cigar, and I just hate verbalizing them.
You sound like you could write for another website that everybody reads. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't disagree with you. That's I'm not very good at this either. So, you know, that's kind of the direction that I'm going. I'm sure someone with a more sophisticated palate could call it out better, but I'm on the same page as you.
Before we move on and before we take our next break, Jose, Man Angel, he wants you to tell us about Cane. I'm not familiar with them.
All right, so Cane is like my local brewery. It's going to be their sixth anniversary this month. 6th anniversary party will be very soon. In typical New Jersey beer fashion, like they have just exploded over the past year. So I think in 2015, maybe even earlier, I'd have to look because I don't know off the top of my head. They won the Great American Beer Festival grand prize for stout, for their imperial stout called the Night to End All Dawns.
Oh yeah,
and that was really the kickoff to people really finding out about New Jersey beer and Cane as a whole. So, I mean, there used to be a time where I used to go there, and I could walk in anytime on a Saturday afternoon, and just pick up whatever they happen to have released that day, whenever they had a release. And now it's the kind of thing where they've recently switched to online pre-sales or a lottery system.
Yeah.
Because you would go at noon on a Saturday when they open, and there would already be a line of 100, 150 people just on the hope that they would release something that day. And when they opened, if they didn't release anything, 125 of those 150 people would just get in their car and leave. They wouldn't even go inside. There were people lining up as early as 9 a.m., 3 hours before the brewery opened, just hoping that they would release, Sunday brunch or Mexican brunch or Morning Bell or anything. So I've been lucky enough that, either myself or friends, I get most, if not all, of their releases, and they're really phenomenal. They're probably at this point a clear runaway candidate for top brewery in New Jersey. They've just become more popular, too popular for their own good. They like I said, they've just switched to online pre-sales because their neighbors are complaining about the massive hordes of people that show up every Saturday morning.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. So they don't actually announce when they're releasing something. They just kind of they open the door and there's a bunch of cans there.
So they always have their flagships. So almost always they will have cans of Head High, Overhead, and Sneak Box, which are IPAs, double IPAs. Almost always have that, but they will do silent releases. Or in the past they've done silent releases, either cans or usually they'll do their dark beers in a bottle system. And it's always silent releases, or was always silent releases. So, they'd open the door at 12. At 11:55, they'd post on Facebook, "We're releasing Sunday brunch in the brewery.
Wow.
We've got 4,000 bottles, or we've got 8,000 bottles, or whatever." And it's this summer, it's really taken a turn where it's just gotten, obscene. There were rumors on, Reddit, NJ Beer or Beer Advocate, where people are like, they're going to release Sunday brunch, and that went for a month and a half. So for a month and a half, every Saturday, people were lining up earlier, and more people were lining up until they finally released Sunday brunch, and they ended up opening the doors at 11 because they already had 250 people in line.
Wow.
That's nuts. It's not fun. It's not
yeah,
fun.
it becomes it becomes less of a hobby and more of a, I don't know. It feels more like a job that you're not getting paid for.
And that's exactly it. And then, most of these guys turn around and just sell the beer for, Mexican brunch. I'll tell you a funny story about Mexican brunch since we're talking about King. Mexican brunch was released by an online pre-sale, $80 for 6 bottles, 2 weeks ago, let's say, about 2 weeks ago. Before the bottles were even picked up, as soon as people found out they won the pre-sale, there were bottles up for sale on the black market for $100, $150.
Wow.
But they had a problem. So something went wrong. The spices that Kane used in the beer caused the beers not full-on geyser as some beers that you have. You open up the cork and it just explodes. It's like a fountain. Mm-hmm. This wasn't that, but there was some overflow on some of the bottles. Not all of the bottles, but if there was the right amount of sediment in the beer, if it was kind of at the bottom of the barrel that filled it, there was some overflow. People started complaining. Kane announced they weren't asking you to reach out to them for a refund. They automatically refunded everyone. And they didn't ask for the bottles back. So we're talking $80,000, $100,000 worth of sales that were refunded without question.
Wow.
Yeah. So, if you want that's the message I tell you about Kane. Not only is it the best brewery in New Jersey, but they're classy stand-up dudes.
Awesome. All right, before we get into our last beer, we're going to take our second station break here. We'll be right back.
This show is sponsored by Cigar Oasis. Don't spend all your time worrying about your cigar wrappers cracking, splitting, or falling apart from humidity fluctuation issues. Set it and forget it by choosing Cigar Oasis, a professional solution which provides equal distribution of humidity with precise electronic controls. Monitor your cigars through the internet using the smart humidor Wi-Fi attachment. Why don't you spend all your time enjoying your cigars and relaxing, and let Cigar Oasis protect your cigars? Cigar Oasis has solutions for any humidor. Make sure you set it and forget it today.
And we're back. So we're of course here. Victor Lucatitoro said that Matt is the master of finding quality beer, and he wanted to know what you're smoking. Of course, we're both smoking the Joya de Nicaragua Antaño Gran Reserva. If mine will focus here, get it in front of my face. There we go. So this, for anybody who doesn't know, is, of course, the original Antano that we all love, but they age the leaves for 5 years prior to rolling. So they've got a little extra fermentation on them. And it really makes for like a way more refined experience that is kind of like a, I don't know, it tastes like a well-aged version of the original Antano, but a little bit less of that like heat and strength that you kind of get from it.
Yeah.
And he also wants to know what the place you're at is.
So I'm at Barrister Cigars in Union, New Jersey. This is one of the first and only Liga Privada lounges in the country. So this and Wooden Indian in Pennsylvania, and I guess at this point Riverside is probably a Liga Privada lounge, and so. Corona, I guess. I'm not sure if they're a Liga Privada lounge or what their official designation is.
I don't think they are. I know they're a DDRP, but I don't think they're Liga Privada.
The really cool story, and I know Tripp is trying to move along the show, but I ramble. So
go for it, man.
I'm in Nicaragua. I'm hanging out at Drew Estate, and Jesse is showing me around Subculture Studios. This is, I don't know, several years ago. And what's his name? Lafferty is there, and he goes, hey Matty, check this out. And he's showing me some artwork that Jesse is working on. And he goes, this is for a place in New Jersey. And I'm like, oh, where? He's like, Barrister Cigars in Union, New Jersey. And I'm like, dude, I just moved 5 minutes from Union, New Jersey. Because I literally had just moved up here from kind of the Jersey Shore. And he's like, we're all going there. We're having a grand opening of the Liga Privada Lounge in 2 weeks. And 2 weeks later, I met JD and Lafferty and Pedro and the whole crew at Barrister Cigars, and I've probably been here every day since that point. So it's funny how things play out like that.
Wow. So my last beer is from Crux Brewing. Crux is in Bend, Oregon. They were founded in 2012. This is from their Banished series that I've featured before. A thing that always drives me crazy that Matt and I were talking about before. They not only do they have this like crazy intense wax, like that's some thick wax on there. But I lost it. But they also put a cork in it. Oh, here it is. They put a cork in, so you got to eat through the wax. Then you got to pop the top off. Then you got to pull the cork out. So I would imagine these beers would age really well because you're not going to have to worry much about them going bad while they're aging. But the one that I'm drinking tonight is Freak Cake. So this is they call it an old brown ale that is barrel aged with Brettanomyces. Is that how I say it?
It's close. You're very close.
Okay.
Brettanomyces.
Brettanomyces?
Yeah, whatever. It's close.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of read the label here because there is a lot going on before this beer even gets into the bottle. It says it's the brown hue is derived from Belgian aromatic malts and fruity esters, which are augmented by lemon and orange zest. For a further twist, the Brettanomyces introduced in secondary fermentation has sour cherries, raisins, cranberries, figs, and it ends up making it a mildly acidic ale, which they then age in. It doesn't say what they age it in, but just having had one sip, I'm guessing that they age it in red wine barrels. And this old brown ale is 10.5% ABV, 35 IBUs. What are you drinking, Matt?
So I have now moved on from New Jersey beers, but I'm drinking a beer from Easton, Pennsylvania, which is literally like the first town in Pennsylvania once you leave New Jersey. And it's Weyerbacher Insanity. So Weyerbacher has a beer called Blithering Idiot, which is a barley wine. And they take that and then they age it in whiskey barrels. And that's what gives you Insanity. So we've moved up to 11.1% ABV. So you get the barley wine, but additional level of complexity to an already intense malt profile by adding a combination of vanilla, oak, and whiskey notes. So this is definitely my nightcap.
Yeah.
This is something that I would think would typically go well. I think if we were smoking the original Antaño, this would probably be hitting amazingly with this, because you get that spice and that strength and that power from the original Antaño with kind of the booziness and the oaky and vanilla flavors of the barrel-aged barley wine.
Yeah.
We'll see how it works here.
So, I mean, just taking one sip of this one and smoking the cigar, I messed up real bad. This is a good beer. It just, like, it's got way too much going on for this cigar. It completely overpowers it. It's got, like, that funky sourness of a sour beer. And then on top of that, it's got, like, the sour cherry is very, very prevalent. And then the sweetness from, like, the raisins and the apricots and whatever else they said was in there. Cranberries and figs. I mean, there's just so much going on. Like, and there's a little bit of, like, bitterness from those cranberries. It's just way too much going on for this cigar.
See, this is what we were talking about before, right? If you get some of those heavier cigars, some of those adjunct heavy, we were talking about stouts or porters, but this applies. Yeah, there's just too much, and they tend to not really work well with cigars. If I really want to smoke a cigar when I'm drinking a beer like that, I go with something lighter that is clearly non-offensive, and I don't really care if I taste the cigar. It's more about just
where you're just smoking to smoke. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the kind of cigar I would pair with this. This beer just has too much going on, I think, to pair with anything. This was the first time I've had it, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. But it's just way more intense than I was expecting for a brown ale. It reminds me a lot of, have you had Consecration from Russian River?
I have.
It reminds me a lot of that, like where there's just so much funk and so much, like, there's so many layers. Like, there's layers of bitterness, layers of sweetness, layers of, like, sour and funk, and there's just so much going on that I don't know if any cigar could stand up to this.
Well, now I'm going to be eager to track one of these down just to see. I'm curious if you drank it on a clean palate, what your thoughts of the beer were.
Oh, I mean, my thoughts on the beer are that it's amazing. I could drink this beer, like, every night. After dinner, I could sit down and drink this beer, but it just doesn't go well with a cigar.
Yeah.
I'll have to track down a bottle. It's pretty readily available in this area.
So you mentioned how it came with the wax top. So I'll give a quick shout out because it's a good story and a funny anecdote here. I hate wax top bottles because they make it so difficult, and especially if I've been having a few drinks already. I mean, who wants to try and slice their hand open, opening a wax top to the bottle, especially one that has a cork after it. But for anyone listening, you can go check out, there's a company called Yopeners. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's Yopeners. And if you do a Google search, they're on Etsy. They've got an Etsy store. They're called Yopeners. And it's this ingenious tool that it comes with like a serrated, it's not even a knife, it's just like a serrated kind of metal piece that works really well in taking off wax tops. And it also comes up with a metal bottle opener, but it's got a magnet in there. So when you open the bottle, it leaves the cap in perfect condition with like no bends or creases of any kind. I don't know what kind of crazy voodoo witchcraft it is, but it blows my mind every time I see it. But the great story about this is that it's made by a guy and his son, and the guy is a woodworker, and his son is autistic and blind, and it's like the thing that the two of them do together. And so they're decently expensive. They're like $25 a piece, but it's a feel-good story, and it's a fantastic tool. So
I might buy one of these. I'm looking at them now. They have like, you can get them kind of like engraved however you want. You can get them made from bourbon barrel staves, which is really cool. Like I mean, they're not that expensive. It's $23 for one. That's got a rare earth magnet in it, and it's made from a bourbon barrel stave, which is pretty sweet.
I've got a couple of buddies that have them. They work fantastically. They
also make a cigar ashtray out of the inside of a bourbon barrel.
Oh yes, I see it. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay. All right.
So
these guys might get some business from us.
So Yopeners on Etsy. Tell them you heard about it on Sharing Your Pairings, and it's a great product and a good story.
Yeah, I could definitely see one of these things being useful. And so about the cap bending, that's a really interesting thing to me, because there are, everybody's got that one bottle opener that just bends it in half.
Oh yeah.
Or you have that one, like, those pocket knife ones that kind of pull up that corner, and you end up with like that sharp piece, like that.
Yep.
But then you've got ones that end up like, this one's kind of unique because it's a little dented, but because of the wax it looks flat. But sometimes you end up with like that perfect cap that you can kind of snap back on. And I'm kind of always looking for a bottle opener that can do that every time. And it sounds like this might be able to do it.
I know a lot of people that like to do, like they keep them, like the same way you or I might keep cigar bands, and make a poster or mount on my bar in my basement or a table or something. People take bottle caps and create designs and stuff. So, I mean, if this is going to keep the bottle cap in perfect condition, use it just the same.
Yeah. How's that last beer treating you?
The beer is good. I think, I think the first beer, the IPA, the zero IBU IPA, worked best with the cigar. The second beer, the smoked coffee maple brown ale, did not work with the cigar at all. I think there was just too much going on. Probably the same thing you're dealing with right now with the brown ale. The barley wine, it works. You really need a little more spice, I think. If the Antano Gran Reserva had a little more spice, a little more kick, a little more power, I think it would hold up better. The booze and the kind of floral flavors of the barley wine are really kind of overpowering the cigar at this point.
So I was thinking about just not going back to the beer until after we were done with the show. But I went back for a couple more sips, and I think I've warmed up to it a little bit. Like, I don't know if it's warmed up or if my palate has acclimated, but it's not like that sourness isn't shocking my palate as much. And I'm actually getting some better, like, I don't know what exactly the flavors are that I'm getting out of the cigar. Like I think the fruit sweetness in the beer is actually bringing out some of the fruity sweetness in the cigar, which is nice. I'm enjoying it a lot more than I was when I first started drinking it.
Good.
I'm at least seeing a little more pairing potential. And we did kind of skip over our last station break, but it's brought to us by Drew Estate, and you kind of already plugged Drew Estate. So Drew Estate, they make great cigars. They also distribute these cigars. So anywhere you can get Drew Estate, they can also probably get Joya de Nicaragua. So, buy some Joya de Nicaragua and Drew Estate cigars. They're great.
Yeah. Anyone that knows me knows I hype up JD enough.
You're kind of a whore.
Yeah, I might be a little bit of a Drew Estate fanboy sometimes.
But, I mean, they do make great cigars, in my opinion. I know not everybody loves them, but I think I haven't had many bad cigars from them.
I love those guys.
Oh, and speaking of Drew Estate, we're actually going to have Fabian on tomorrow night. As far as I know, it's our first ever cigar chat with, like, the non-traditional side of cigars. So this is going to be, like, an entire cigar chat focusing on acid and KFC and, all of those other cigars that Drew Estate makes besides their traditional products, which I'm kind of excited about because I used to view them as just garbage that I would never bother smoking. But I think I've kind of come around. There's definitely a place for them. They don't fit my palate that well, but there's definitely a market and a place for that kind of cigar.
Definitely a market. I mean, the KFC, I'll be honest, and I've told JD this to his face, the KFC, I just cannot smoke. Like, period, cannot smoke.
And for me, like, I used to be, until probably 2 years ago, I had an acid extraordinary Larry that somebody sent me in 2006. I didn't smoke it until April of this year because I was like, I'm just never smoking that thing. I'm just going to stick it in this extra humidor where I stash all of my infused stuff for when a buddy comes over.
Yeah.
And it just sat in there for 10 years. But I think there's like, there are redeeming factors about those, and I'm kind of excited to have like a show dedicated to it.
When I talk to people that aren't cigar smokers, they or I mention that I know Jonathan Drew or whatever, more often than not, the name acid will come out of their mouth. So
really?
It blows my mind, but people know acid, like it is, and I can tell you, I spend a lot of time in cigar shops. You'd be surprised how many people come in, looking for, hey, you got those acid? They're very popular.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm gonna go back through my beers here, and I caught a fly. So the sourness after the fruitcake, the sourness of the blood orange goza is nothing. Like, it almost tastes like it's not sour at all. I'm gonna have to think about this for a second. I can't give it a rating yet.
Okay.
So I know you've been away from the show for a while. So we started doing when Rob left and I moved in. We started doing ratings. So we try to give like at least within like 2 or 3 points of rating. So usually it would be like, I don't know, 90 to 93 or something like that.
Do we do the beer or we do the pairing? Okay, I got
the pairing, not the beer itself, not the cigar itself.
Okay.
It's how they work together.
Okay, I got you. All right. You want me to take a pass?
Go ahead with your first one.
All right, so my first one was Cyberbullied. It was a 0 IBU IPA from Bolero Snort in New Jersey. Heavy on the hops, Citra and Amarillo and Mosaic and this and that and a million other things. Super floral on the beer. Really smooth, really nice, a little fruitiness. really works well with the cigar. I mean, we're talking like mid 90s, and anyone who remembers me knows I don't give out.
You are
90s.
a harsh rater.
Yeah, I do not give out 90s easily, but I'm talking like 95 range for that pairing. I thought it was fantastic. It really, for any nerves I had doing the show for the first time in a year plus, that pairing kicked me off right.
So I went back and I tasted the Blood Orange Goza a couple times. I think this actually, for a Goza, I don't think you're going to find a Goza that pairs better with a cigar than this, because it's kind of got all those elements of a Goza, but it's not pushing any of those elements too far. Like with Westbrook is a very sour Goza, and it's fairly salty. I feel like that particular Goza doesn't go as well with a cigar because it's so kind of one-sided to the sour end, and this one's got more of that, like a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of maltiness, a little bit of sourness. I would give this one like a 90.
All right, so we're starting out high. We're starting out good.
What about your second one?
All right, the second one was another beer from Bolero Snort out of, I think they're based out of Ridgewood, New Jersey. It was called Monty, which is a smoked coffee maple brown ale. I've had the beer before. I had it last year. I had it this year's version for the first time last night. I had a couple cans. I like the beer. I don't think the beer is fantastic. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of smoked beers, not a huge fan of brown ales, but I like the coffee and maple with it. It just does not work with the cigar. I think there's too much going on. The flavors really conflict with each other. Like I said, I'm a hard grader, so I'm talking low 80s on this one.
Ouch.
Like 81 to 84, I guess, by your plan here, or your scoring, which I don't think is horrendous.
No.
I'm just, it just, there are much better pairings that you can get.
Yeah. So actually, that makes me want to just bring up a point really quick. So my rating scale, 85 is absolute neutral. If it's less than 85, that means it had more bad than good. If it's higher than 85, that means it's more good than bad. Is that kind of your thinking?
Yeah.
This one was kind of just below that neutral.
Yeah.
It wasn't terrible. It just wasn't great.
Exactly.
Okay. So for What Rough Beast from Breakside, the New England style IPA, I think this one's high 80s. I feel like it pairs really well with this particular cigar, but it just didn't bring out as many flavors in the cigar as the Blood Orange Goza did. So, like 80, 88, 89.
Okay.
What about your final beer?
All right, so my final beer was Weyerbacher Insanity, so a beer out of Easton, Pennsylvania. This one, barley wine, a bourbon, whiskey barrel-aged barley wine. Like I said, I think it would serve it better with the original Antano, something a little spicier, a little more powerful, a little more strength. But I still think it worked. Definitely worked better than the Monty. I'm probably going like an 86 to 89, so high 80s on this one. Again, going back to your scoring method, better than neutral, but not nearly as good as the Cyberbully.
And for me, the Freak Cake, this beer is like, it's just like next level complex. The problem is it just covers up the cigar so much. I would give this one like an 82. It's a fantastic beer, just not a good beer for pairing.
So our scores were pretty much close. I mean,
they were actually pretty close.
Yeah, that's not bad. Well, I'll have to send you a can of Cyberbully so you can try it with the cigar.
I would really appreciate that. So, back to the cigar. What do you think of the Gran Reserva now that you've smoked another one?
So I'm gonna be honest with you. I smoked, like I said, I smoked one of these the other night. I don't think I don't pay attention to cigars like I used to when I was more intimately involved with Cigar Federation. And so I smoked it. I didn't really think much of it. Now that I'm smoking it, taking my time with it, really kind of trying to pay attention, I really like this cigar. And I didn't think I did at first, but I really like it. My palate has changed a lot over the years. There was a time a couple of years ago where I was like Logan. I was hard hitter.
Raging.
Give me more power, more spice. I want the Hero Bomb. I want in your face. I think my palate has gotten more refined a little bit over the years. And my favorite cigar, the cigar I smoke most often is first generation Habano seed, and it tastes like rose petals. And this reminds me, it's a totally different cigar, but it reminds me in some ways of that. I'm really digging it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see myself smoking this. I see myself smoking this more than the classic Antaño. Now that I know that it's out there. Like before, the Antaño was just a great cigar that I didn't smoke often enough. I feel like this is a cigar that's going to be more in my mind. I'm going to think about it a little more and want this cigar.
Yeah, definitely.
Dennis Fang says that Evil Twin Two Roads, which I feel like they called that something. Was it Evil Roads or something? They're Geyser Goza.
Yeah. Have you had that?
I have actually. So there was a thing I haven't bought from them in a little while, and I'm blanking on the name. Tavor.
Okay.
No. Maybe it is Tavor. I don't remember what it was called. But it's a service based out of Washington State. So just like a couple hours north of me. And they kind of are like, I don't know, like the Groupon sort of beers. They curate beers and then sell them to their club. But the really interesting thing about them is that they have flat rate shipping. So it's like, I think it was $16 shipping, and you buy anywhere between 1 and 24 bottles, and they just ship once a month. So every day you get an email, and
all the same or a variety pack?
Variety. So every day you get an email that's like, do you want this beer? And you say, yes, I want 1 bottle, I want 6 bottles, or I want, sometimes it's like cans in 4-packs. You say, I want 2 4-packs. And then at the end of the month, they just charge your account the flat rate shipping. So they're charging you every time you buy beer. And then at the end of the month, they charge you for the shipping, and they ship you a box or 2 of beers.
Yeah. And that's how you got it?
Yeah.
So Geyser Goza, not my favorite Goza. I'm not a huge fan of Evil Twin or Two Roads, to be honest with you. Geyser Goza is cool because it's made with Icelandic glacier water. That's why they call it Geyser Goza. And I actually think you can kind of taste it in it. I mean, that could be just me being like, so beer snooty, but like I legitimately think you can taste it in it.
So actually, Dennis just commented and says that it's brewed with Icelandic moss, rye, herbs, sea kelp, skyr, which I don't know what that is, SKYR, and birch smoked sea salt.
I would tell Dennis, like I said, you want a good Goza, you go to Westbrook, you get the Westbrook Goza, you get the key lime pie Goza.
Oh God, that key lime pie Goza is so good.
That stuff is on another level.
And he says skyr is yogurt. Okay. So it's got yogurt in it.
Is he from Iceland?
No, he's actually from the Ukraine.
Oh, okay. All right. That's on another level.
So Westbrook their standard goza really is like the gold standard of gozas. There's not another goza that nails every element of what the style should be. Like I don't know. I haven't smoked a goza that was, back when gozas were invented 300 years ago.
Yeah,
or
the American style goza.
But yeah, they're kind of the best example of what I think a goza should be. And that key lime pie, oh my god, that one was amazing. Stefan Lindblad, one of our members of Cigar Federation, last time I was in Seattle, he had just come back from a trip where he had somehow found a couple six-packs, and he was gracious enough to snag one can. And, I mean, that one is just incredible.
I think I might actually have sent him, when Westbrook first started distributing to New Jersey, I think I might have actually sent him a six-pack or something.
He said you did, and
yeah.
he took that off.
Yeah, it is. Again, there are probably beer aficionados that might be listening to this and being like, "These guys have no idea what they're talking about," because technically it's the American style of goza that Westbrook is.
It's not the classic Belgian.
Exactly. But we're American, so we're superficial, and that's all we actually think about. But I love that.
I mean, I've never seen a goza that came from Europe. If I did, I would buy it and just try it. But as far as I know, there aren't any gozas from Europe that are distributed out here. And I missed the end of our Armed Forces radio segment, so I'm going to have to do a little bit editing for that. But thank you for listening to Cigar Chat. Thank you for listening to Sharing Our Pairings. We appreciate you listening. Stay safe out there. We appreciate you out there protecting our freedoms. Stay safe. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for your service. Be well.
All right, now we're back in our after party segment.
All right. Throw me some more questions. I'm digging the questions. There's some good ones. And I like people that know about New Jersey beer. So
let me see if we have any more. No, we don't really have any more questions.
Yeah. All right. I'm glad I'm that entertaining that there's no questions.
Actually, I have some questions about New Jersey beer. Like, what is the up-and-coming brewery in New Jersey right now? Because everywhere now has, like, a couple years ago, it was kind of like, there were craft breweries.
Yep. And
everybody in the area knew who they were, and that was it. Now, the kind of ideal path for a brewery, everybody in the area knows who you are, then you explode and you're everywhere. But where I am, we've got I think we've got somewhere around 70 breweries within 20 miles of the city now. And
which blows my mind.
Probably half of those don't even make it out of the state.
Yeah.
What are the ones that people are going crazy for locally that you think are going to blow up?
Yeah, so I mean, you got to understand that New Jersey brewing beer is we're years behind where you are, right? The Pacific Northwest, is kind of prime. It's like Massachusetts and Vermont and stuff and Maine are here, right? New Jersey. I mean, it's only very recently that legislation has passed that's been kind of pro-brewery. So we've seen a complete upspike in the amount of breweries that have come in the past 5 years. 5 years ago, there were maybe, I don't even know if there were 20 breweries in the state. And now it feels like there's, 20 opening every year. I think we're somewhere, you say you've got 70 within the city or within 20
that's just a guess. But it's a lot.
I think New Jersey might have 70 within the state, right? Yeah. And it takes me, 4-ish hours to go from the top of the state to the bottom of the state. So, I mean, and probably an hour and a half to go across. So,
yeah.
I mean, you're talking about 70 breweries, but it's getting much more popular. More are coming. So you've got your top tier. and that's Cane and Carton. Cane has really usurped Carton over the past couple of years, and is now.
I mean, they're definitely more well known outside of.
They're clearly the number one right now. I used to be a much bigger fan of Carton because I really liked what Carton was doing. They're brewing unique, right? They're brewing craft beer, unlike anyone else is doing. Cane is doing, the IPAs and the stouts and the porters, the Belgian styles, that a lot of other people are doing. They're just doing it better than everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those two are the top. Then you have the next tier, which is Magnify, which is in Fairfield, New Jersey, so northern Jersey, and Conclave, which is in Flemington, or around that area, Raritan, New Jersey, which is kind of central West Jersey. Conclave, I love. Very small operation. They've just started canning. They barely distribute outside of their own brewery. Make a phenomenal IPAs. Gravitational Waves is probably their best known. They make an amazing milk porter, I guess it is, Mexican Morning. You can look that up. Magnify has really jumped on the IPA bandwagon and the northeastern IPA bandwagon. And they get a lot of flack in the state, rightfully so, because for a variety of reasons we don't really have time to get into. But they're very popular. They're the kind of thing where they have releases weekly, and people are lining up and they sell out within a couple hours of cans. I've not been a huge fan of Magnify. They were doing something called the Woe series, which was like saisons, which was really fantastic. And then they've gone completely IPA. They think if they include hazy or Northeast IPA in the title, that people will go crazy about it, and people do. But I haven't liked what they've been producing. Some of it has been, I thought, buttery or infected in some cases. I just had their release the other day. They had a triple can release, an IPA, a double IPA, and a triple IPA. They were the best beers I've had from Magnify, maybe ever, but at least in a very long time. So they're upcoming. If you go down to South Jersey, Cape May Brewing Company is massive. They might be actually the biggest brewery in New Jersey. And the one that you might hear about the most outside of New Jersey, just because, like I said, they are the largest brewery in New Jersey. I'm not in love with what they're producing. They produce some okay stuff, some stuff that I just don't think is good. But very popular in South Jersey, very popular in Philadelphia. South Jersey is practically Philadelphia. North Jersey is practically New York City. South Jersey is practically Philadelphia. They're very popular down there. A couple of breweries that I'm high on. Icarus Brewing in Lakewood, New Jersey is really new. They're about a year old. I'm going to give him props because he's a fellow Ohio State Buckeye. The head brewer, Jay, he's really coming into his own, making some great IPAs, some cool beers, worth paying attention to. There is a brewer in, I forget the town it's in South Jersey, called Village Idiot. Very small brewery. They don't can. They don't do anything. You walk in there. It's like a small restaurant. But they make, I think they're one of the most underhyped brewers in New Jersey. Making really great beer. They make a beer called Elvis Left the Building, which is like a peanut butter banana stout. They make some funky stuff. I dig what they're doing, and it's one that not a lot of people talk about. But really, I mean, there's a lot going on in New Jersey. There's a lot of breweries that are new, a lot that are doing it the right way, a lot that are doing it the wrong way. It'll be interesting how things play out. in the state over the next couple of years, and I'm curious how the state will support all of these breweries. But for a beer drinker and a beer nerd, it's a really exciting time in New Jersey.
So Dennis, so I didn't mention this before. Dennis lives in North Jersey. I don't remember which city. He used to live in Brooklyn.
He pinged me. He actually lives in Central Jersey. I don't know if he knows that. Okay. He lives in Central Jersey, which is a complete New Jersey joke, and you won't get it unless you're from New Jersey.
I don't get it.
He does live in Central Jersey.
So he says there are 76 production breweries in New Jersey with 23 on the way. And I was doing some research. So we have, in Oregon, there are a total of, where did I see that number? 208 breweries. And 84 of those are within the Portland area.
So, I mean, first of all, Portland is one of the meccas of craft beer.
Absolutely.
Right? So, I mean, it's hard to compare. That's like saying, I'm curious what the numbers are in San Diego. But New Jersey is definitely up and coming.
It really is. Just the fact that New Jersey is not an enormous state, and the fact that they have 76 breweries is crazy.
And like he said, 23 coming, right? And I'll give a shout out because I moderate NJ Beer, our NJ Beer on Reddit. You can see a full listing and a full map of all the breweries that are in production and that are coming. And it's exploded over the past 2 years.
Dennis is asking about milkshake IPAs. I have never heard this term.
Yeah.
What does that mean, Matt? Our resident beer expert.
So milkshake IPAs, I'm not going to say that they invented it, but the brewery that popularized milkshake IPAs is a brewery called Tired Hands in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. So if any of our cigar friends from Wooden Indian are paying attention, they're very close to Tired Hands. Tired Hands makes milkshake IPAs, which is I don't know that they include lactose in all of them. But basically, it's their way of saying, super hazy New England style IPAs, and they've become very popular. It's the kind of thing where it's actually a running joke in the beer community around here that when Tired Hands releases a milkshake IPA, they open, let's say, at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday or Thursday or whatever day they open. People will put their lawn chairs out on the street. Mind you, Tired Hands is in downtown Ardmore, Pennsylvania. So it's not a huge city, but it's a city.
Yeah.
People will put their lawn chairs out like 9 a.m. in the morning. And you drive by, or you drive through downtown Ardmore, Pennsylvania on a release day, and all you see is lawn chairs lining the sidewalks. It's the most ridiculous thing, because if that happened in New Jersey, I can guarantee you people would be like, screw this noise, and they take the lawn chairs and throw them out into the street and stuff. But for some reason, nobody cares in Pennsylvania. I guess they're much nicer than us in New Jersey, but it's super popular, and I'll tell you, I've had a few that aren't amazing, but most of the milkshake IPAs I've had from them are phenomenal. There's all different flavors. There's double vanilla milkshake IPA. There's yuzu milkshake IPA. There's coconut milkshake. But they're all on another level. So just imagine kind of a flavored, super hazy, super creamy, super fruity IPA, and they're phenomenal.
That sounds pretty good. I think I might have to see if there's anybody locally that's making something like that. I expect it'll be a couple years before we start seeing it. This year is the year of the Northwest or the Northeast IPA here.
Yeah.
So we didn't get super hazy IPAs until this year. So yeah, I don't have any input on milkshake IPAs, but it sounds like something I would like.
I know, let's put it this way. Of all the people that I've had it, or that I know that have had milkshake IPAs, I've heard, oh, I think that's too, like the key lime one, that's too key limey, or the watermelon one, it's too, it's too, artificial tasting. But no one has ever said, oh, I hate milkshake IPAs. Most people are like, oh my God, that's the most amazing thing I've ever had.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to track something like that down. So it's weird to me that kind of like waiting in line for a beer release is so popular there, because that doesn't really happen here. I've never seen a beer release in Portland that's like people are lining up to get it, because I think that there just aren't that many people comparatively who are ready to wait in line for a beer.
See, I'm going to be devil's advocate here and say I don't think it's that. I think there are people, right? I think it's a combination of two things. I think, A, you've got more breweries within 20 minutes.
That's true.
Than we have within 4 plus
5 hours. Yeah.
Right? So that's part one. Part two is I think your beer scene is more mature. So I think that the breweries there that know that they've got beers like that are like, we don't want people waiting for hours. We're going to do a lottery, or we're going to do an online pre-sale, or we're going to do a brewery loyalty club, or whatever the case may be. And no New Jersey, well, that's not true. There are some New Jersey breweries that have loyalty clubs, and there are some like Kane that's beginning to do the brown paper tickets or Eventbrite or whatever to do kind of the online pre-sales or the lotteries, but New Jersey's still trying to figure it out. They just don't get it yet. So I think that might be a bigger piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I also think it's less of a big deal when a tiny brewery does a release here. I mean, it seems like a tiny brewery can open up, make one really good beer, and then they've got lines around the block for months. Just because of the hype off that one good beer, and anything they make is gold after that.
I mentioned Conclave, right? Conclave Brewing, and I think they're in Flemington, New Jersey. They're close there. Anybody that looks it up, you'll be able to find it. Conclave Brewing. Their first ever release, like bottle, can, anything, was barrel-aged Mexican Morning. Okay? Mexican Morning is one of the best beers they make. They released a barrel-aged version, which no one had ever tried before. Right? They'd never released it on tap before. But it was their first bottle release. They released it on a Sunday. They're closed on Sundays. So it was literally come just to pick up a bottle. There were 100 bottles, and it was one bottle per person. So you're telling me a small brewery that's never released a beer before, that is releasing a beer that they've never produced before, they never brewed before, and it's 100 bottles, one bottle per person. And it's not like you can go and then drink. There were... Following so far?
Yes. But I think I just got, like, a light bulb just went off.
There were people in line, and I know this because I was the second person in line that day. There were people in line starting at 7:30 in the morning. And by the time they opened at noon, they already had the 100 people in line. And this is a small brewery that had never released anything before, and that was releasing something that they had never brewed before.
So the light bulb that just went off is, as far as I can remember, I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen a release that was bottles or cans only, that was only available at the brewery. Okay. So the scene here is kegs. Like, people do that. Like, people say, we just tapped Plenty Younger, and post it on Facebook, and then an hour later that keg's done. Yep. Because people rush there. Or I mean, there's similar local beers like the Safe Word IPA from Breakside. But I can't think, like, the only one that I can think of off the top of my head is when they released Safe Word in bottles. And that had already been available on tap all over the city for years.
It's I mean, that's the scene here. It's most of the breweries, there might be a special event where, you can find them on tap somewhere. Mm-hmm. But most of the breweries here are, not distributing outside of the brewery. So you're only going
makes a lot of sense.
To the brewery to get that. And if they've got any can or bottle releases, it's only at the brewery.
Okay. Yeah, so that's like kind of the opposite of what it is here.
And again, I think it's just immaturity of the New Jersey, community.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, I think that makes it about time to end the show. I think that's a good note to end on. Thanks everybody for watching or listening to the podcast or watching on YouTube. We appreciate it. This is something that we like doing, but we wouldn't be able to do it unless there was an audience out there. So thank you for watching. And Matt, thank you for joining me.
Hey, dude, I'm glad to be back. Anytime you want to have me, I'd love to. I love smoking cigars and talking about beer. So,
all right,
anytime.
So I'm thinking for the next sharing our pairings. The next one might be with John. I'm not sure, but the next one I do with you, I think we should do me, you, and Dennis. I think that would be a good show because we're all just total beer geeks.
Well, maybe Dennis and I can meet up somewhere in North Jersey and figure that out.
I mean, he commutes to the city, so I just assumed it was North Jersey.
I will get into what's the difference between North Jersey, Central Jersey, and South Jersey on the next Sharing Your Pairings.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Have a great week.
Adios.